Hello and welcome to the Intentional Brief, your weekly video update on the one big thing in cybersecurity news for middle market companies, their executive teams, and investors. I'm your host, Shay Colson, managing partner at Intentional Cybersecurity, and you can find us online at intentionalcyber.com. Today is Monday, May 12th, 2025, and this is very much one of those full circle episodes because everything we're going to talk about today, we've talked about on this show before. So what we're going to talk about is this long horizon of ransomware impacts. We saw a couple of stories last week that need to be revisited, and that's never a good sign. First, we saw an article noting that, quote, venture capital firm Insight Partners has confirmed that sensitive data for employees and limited partners was stolen in a January 2025 cyber attack. Again, January to May is quite a bit of time, not as much time as our next story, but a notice from the firm outlines the specifics of what they know, including the fact that, quote, the data that has been exposed varies per individual and investor and may include fund information, management company information, portfolio company information, banking information, tax information, personal information of current and former employees, and information related to limited partners. So that seems like quite a bit of data for folks and organizations with quite a bit of money. So we'll hope the rest of the controls for those teams are solidly in place because this is not a good look, particularly for a firm that has so many cybersecurity investments. It may not be a coincidence then that we also saw an announcement last week from Warburg Pincus that they have hired former CISO of Google Cloud, Phil Venables, to work with them and their portfolio companies as an advisor on this very issue around cyber. So again, not great for Insight. Kudos to them for the notice and for the acknowledgement. But again, to be 5 months later and just now starting notification process of this data being exposed, that's a long time to go without knowing what the status was. It's actually not the only thing that we're seeing this week where we have this delayed notification. We also saw an article or series of articles about PowerSchool, the K-12 EdTech provider that was breached back in December of 2024, who put out a notice reading, quote, PowerSchool is aware that a threat actor has reached out to multiple school district customers in an attempt to extort them using data from the previously reported December 2024 incident. This really is unfortunate because, again, we thought this issue was put to bed. We also learned a couple of details about PowerSchool's choices during that ransomware incident, where they note, quote, we made the decision to pay a ransom because we believed it to be in the best interest of our customers and the students and communities we serve. Quote, it was a difficult decision and one which our leadership team did not make lightly, but we thought it was the best option for preventing the data from being made public, and we felt it was our duty to take that action. As is always the case with these situations, there was a risk that the bad actors would not delete the data they stole, despite assurances and evidence that were provided to us, unquote. So again, obviously hard to trust the bad guys to do what they say, and now according to several districts, those districts themselves are being actively extorted directly, but appear to have very little recourse, right? They don't necessarily know what data was involved. They might just assume that it was all data, and it was taken in December of 2024 from PowerSchools, not from the district themselves. So while stories like this are certainly disheartening, even at times frustrating, I think they can serve as good and prescient reminders for us to refocus on those things that are, I would say, important but decidedly unglamorous in this context. So that includes things like building a data retention policy and then practices to enforce it, and continuing to build and refine our own third-party risk management procedures internally for our vendors. You'll recall that we saw a sharp spike in third-party breaches reported in those annual retrospectives we looked at a couple of weeks back. And these are the sort of impacts that these breaches can have. We've talked about the long tails. We've talked about the long run. Here we are 5, 6, 7 months later, and only just now are the actual victims finding out the scope or extent of this event. And that's really a tough thing to do, and certainly something that we don't want to put on our customers or on our partners. So from a fundraising perspective, quiet week from fundraisers with just over $2.4 billion in newly committed capital, the lowest amount we've seen any week all year, which I gotta say is not surprising given how much volatility we've been working through in the macro sense, but certainly something to keep in mind as we head into Q2 and start to see whether we have movement on tariffs, whether they're going to really go down, whether they're going to really impact. Folks, I think, are trying to just wait and see, and that's an okay strategy sometimes. As a reminder, you can find links to the articles that we talked about in the comments section below. You can find back issues and written transcripts of these videos at intentionalcyber.com, and we will see you next week for another edition of the Intentional Brief.